Good evening and welcome to Medill's. I think this is our 5th magazine career fair. Can everyone hear me okay? Yep, good. This is our 5th magazine career fair. We started doing these a few years ago. Actually, I like to say out of self-preservation, because around this time every year I get panicked emails from graduating seniors who want to know, oh my God, I don't have a job. What am I going to do? And so this is a way for us to bring in some alums who've actually been where you are and have also sent me panicked emails about what they were going to do with their lives, but to tell you a little bit about their career paths so that you can hear a little bit about how they got started, get their sage advice about how you might embark on your own magazine job search, but also to inspire you, to let you know that there actually are careers in magazines, and many of our alums have them and are doing quite well. So we're going to have a conversation a bit, the folks on the panel and I, and then we're going to open the floor for questions to sort of hear what you guys what's on your mind, and sort of get a sense of what you're thinking about and what your fears are, and find some way to allay those if we can. Let me introduce the panelists, if I may. We have from left to right, Danielle Cadet, BSJ 10 and MSJ 11, Associate Editor of Black Voices. Suzy Evans, MSJ 10, Senior Web Editor, Backstage Magazine. Jeff Lee, BSJ 05, MSJ 06, Senior Editor, Architect Magazine. John Mahoney, BSJ 05, Web Editorial Director, Bonnier Tech Group. Felicia Oliver, MSJ 02, Editor, Building Safety Journal. Dan Snierson, BSJ 93, one of the first classes I ever taught. MSJ 94, Senior Editor, Entertainment Weekly. And to join us soon will be Jennifer Tanaka of Chicago Magazine. Thank you guys very much for joining us. I wanted to start by asking each of you if you could tell us a little bit, because titles in magazines are very different. They actually mean different things at different publications. So I actually want to know a little bit about what you do. Like, what is your job, actually? You say senior editor, but sometimes that doesn't mean anything. Sometimes it means writer, sometimes it means editor. So what do you do? What's your day-to-day? Danielle?
Oh, boy. Okay, so as the associate, can you guys hear me all right? As the associate editor at Black Voices, I manage our front page at the Huffington Post. So if you go over to the little More tab and you click down to Black Voices and you go to the front page, I'm the person that puts that together. On the web, you are constantly updating your page and you're constantly updating your site, and so I refresh the page several times a day, minimum 3 to 4 times a day. I'm also responsible for managing all of our content that is coming through. We have a team of 5 different editors, so I'm responsible for keeping track of all of the content that they are producing, and how that content is either getting up on our front page or going onto our Facebook page or getting tweeted out. And then I also am responsible for the content that goes to the Huffington Post front page, because very few people come straight to the Black Voices page when they come to Huffington Post. The first thing you usually do, for those of you who read Huffington Post, is you read that front page. So I am responsible for getting our stories onto that front page. And we are owned by AOL, so we also have our stories on the AOL welcome screen. So I'm responsible for getting our stories onto that as well. I organize our editorial calendar, and I just keep track of what we are, kind of what we're working on, both looking forward and on a daily basis. I interact with our other editors, with our other our section editors, and I think that's it.
Suzy.
I guess the web in my title is a little bit misleading, though I do work on the website. I manage our content at Backstage starts on a web-first model, so all of the content that gets assigned out on the web has the potential to become a print story and then get curated for our print edition. So I manage a staff of freelancers on news and features and reviews for all the verticals on Backstage, and assign stories and assign news and assign features and edit, and also manage a staff of editors on the Backstage team to kind of edit the stories. I also I produce the homepage, so I manage the homepage and refresh it, like Danielle was talking about, making sure that the content is updated and that we're responding to news in the right time. I also write for the publication. I cover mainly theater, and so I contribute both to the print and to the web. Like I was saying, stories start online and go into the print. We're also in the middle of a redesign, so that's taking a large part of my time right now. So managing both what the new design and voice of the website is going to be, along with what the layout and design and voice of the print magazine is going to be. I work really closely with our executive editor and our team of senior editorial on both the print and web sides, and just kind of shaping what the voice of the magazine is and the voice of the brand and which stories we cover.
Jeff?
So I say I'm the senior editor for Architect magazine because it's probably the most recognizable, but I'm really the senior editor for the entire commercial design group, which also include Hanley Wood. We publish EcoStructure, Architect, Architectural Lighting, Metal Mag, and as senior editor, I'm kind of a roving reporter for all of those magazines. So writing feature stories, regular departments for all of those publications, and some various other duties that go along with that. And I've also been kind of helping to lead the editorial team's involvement in creating a community site that goes on our website where architects will be able to register, upload projects, connect with other architects, that sort of thing.
John?
Yeah, like Jeff, I'm sort of spread across 4 magazines. Primarily Popular Science, though, is where I started off. And as the web editor there, I was just in charge of everything editorial on the website, which managing freelancers, overseeing redesigns, doing apps, social media. Basically, running the website is its own editorial product for the most part. And then when our company bought 3 additional magazines from Hachette, which is Pop Photo, American Photo, and Sound and Vision, I sort of became editorial director of that whole group. And now I'm editing myself, American Photo, new website we made for them, and then sort of supervising editors who are already there for the other 2 magazines. But yeah, editorial stuff across all 4 of those sites.
Felicia?
We're a very small department. I work for the International Code Council, and I work for the Building Safety Journal magazine. We have a department of 5 people, so pretty much I'm the person that does the magazine. So I manage the day-to-day operations. I set the deadlines. I assign articles. A lot of our writers are internal experts. We have a few freelancers that do articles that are more of a general interest. We have a company that we work with that we farm out the layouts, so I approve layouts. I send all the copy and the art to them. Obviously come up with story ideas. Yeah, there's not a whole lot that goes on with the magazine that I'm not doing in some capacity. So.
And finally, Dan?
Yeah, I'm a senior writer at Entertainment Weekly, and what that basically means is just writer, reporter, just whatever they need. I mostly cover television, so it's a lot of feature stories and tiny boxes on celebrities, on TV shows, industry trends, things like that. Sometimes you'll do additional reporting, to help out another reporter. Just try to help out any way you can. And then I also write this column called The Hit List, which it's basically a weekly column that pokes fun at the entertainment news. And I spend too much time on the phone negotiating with celebrity publicists who apparently their clients have never made a bad film or a television show. So this is what we talk about a lot. Yes, they are great. Yes, they are wonderful. So there's a lot of time spent doing that too when you want to be writing.
Hold the phone, hold the microphone. Dan, I want to start coming back this way. For everyone, what was your first job out of Medill, and how did you get it?
Well, this is a really short career path, yeah. So I was in the magazine.
Actually, it's bad to start with Dan because it's just such a phenomenal story.
Go
ahead.
Well, basically, I was in the grad program here, and I did an internship downtown at one of the Time Inc. magazines, at People magazine, and then Entertainment Weekly, which is also in the Time Inc. family, had an internship open. So right after I graduated, I started there as an intern, and people were taking jobs, and it was a different time back then. Things were sepia tone, and it was but people were very obsessed with set staff jobs and stuff, and I just felt like, even though it was really risky, I just wanted to take a chance on an internship because it was a magazine I really liked and believed in. So I just figured it'd be a chance to go to LA and have an interesting experience. So I started there as an intern, and it was just one of those things where someone was nice enough to take me under their wing, and then they quit 6 weeks later to go on Extra, and then so they were just like, all right, we need someone to fill in. And our main office is in New York, so we had a very small office in LA, even though you'd think it would be the exact opposite. So there was plenty of opportunity if you were just willing to do stuff. So I actually went to a movie theater and asked people if they would rather be bitten by Tom Cruise or Brad Pitt after Interview with the Vampire. So you do have to start low. And it turned out it was 50-50, which was weird because like I interviewed like 70 people, and it was like exactly 35. And I'm like, oh, they're going to come back and think I interviewed 2 people. But I really did ask like 70 people that question. So yeah, that's basically my career.
Felicia.
Well, my very first job outside of Medill was actually as kind of a permanent freelancer with Black Voices, which was owned by the Tribune at that time. And how I got the job, or the opportunity to freelance with them, is right before graduation. I was a student member of the NABJ, the National Association of Black Journalists, and I and another student, we decided we've got to go to this conference, we've got to get a job. So I remember talking to one of the editors, and I'm sure, he talked to so many people he didn't really remember. But when I graduated and I was getting ready to look for a job, I remember that he said something about he and some other journalists going to South Africa. And my last quarter in graduate school here at Medill, I went to South Africa. So I wanted to bring that up, and I found out that there was someone that I knew that used to work at Black Voices. I brought her name up. Literally, I just called him and just threw out all this information. And he said, oh, well, send me your resume. And within a couple of days, I was working at the Tribune with Black Voices. So I was there for about 2 or 3 years. So that's my story.
John.
I did my TM JR
now,
in current parlance at Spin magazine doing fact checking, and that was in my junior year, and kept in touch with the research editor there, and fortuitously right before I graduated, she took a new job at Blender, a now defunct music magazine that was owned by Dennis and needed full-time freelance researchers. So she emailed me 3 or 4 months before graduation. I said absolutely, and that was that.
Jeff.
I knew I wanted to start looking for a job in Washington, D.C. about 6 months before I graduated. So I went into Abe Peck's office. I don't know if you guys still know Abe Peck. He's like Charles, but not quite as good looking. And I said, "Can you just give me a couple of contacts, and I can email them and just see if they'd be willing to have coffee with me." And he did, and one of them showed me around the offices of Hanley Wood and walked me past one of the editor's offices, and she said, "Oh, by the way, this is Jean, and she's hiring." So I said, "Hi, Jean." And Jean came to a career fair here at Medill, and we saw each other, and she interviewed me right there. And I eventually, 3 months later, ended up with the job there as associate editor for Building Products magazine, reporting on exciting things like roofing, flooring, toilets, faucets, and that lasted for about 2.5 years until the housing industry crashed.
I was in Paris for my global quarter, and I was finishing up, and I was really wanting to move to New York to get a job in magazines, but I was nervous. It was a recession. I didn't know if I was going to get a job, but I got an email right before my global ended from Patty Walter saying that there was a job opening at Prevention magazine, and I had met the editor who was doing the hiring actually at this panel when I was at Medill. And so I didn't have an interview, I didn't have anything, but I knew her from the panel, and so I reached out to her, and I flew back to New York, and so I got an interview for the job opening at Prevention. But then their editor-in-chief got fired or let go at the same time I was interviewing, and so I wasn't hearing anything back, and so I sent Charles a frantic email because I had just landed in New York with no plan, and I thought this was a great idea, and I was really scared that it wasn't. And as soon as I emailed him, he's like, "Oh, I just got an email from this other Medill alum. She's looking for an editorial assistant at Fast Company. You should apply." And so in my panic, I applied for the job at Fast Company, not knowing anything about business, but knowing I wanted to work in magazines and be employed in New York. Applied for it, didn't hear anything back. still panicking. So I sent a follow-up email to the editor, and within like 5 minutes of following up, she got back to me. I went in for an interview, and after a few more rounds of interviews, I ended up getting my first job at Fast Company as an editorial assistant.
Danielle?
All right. My story is actually pretty similar to Dan's. Charles knows this very well. I was frantic when I was about to graduate and was in his office quite often, talking about pretty much every job that I applied to, and there were a lot. And I knew that I wanted. Black Voices had relaunched. It was formerly AOL Black Voices and relaunched in August, and I knew that I wanted to work there. I knew for a fact. And I stayed on the AOL career site and like it was ed.com or ed20, 2010, and I was on that site like all the time, and I applied for anything, everything. And on the Medill listserv, on the alumni listserv, there was an email that went out about an internship at Huffington Post, but it wasn't with Black Voices, it was with the impact section, which is basically like charities and philanthropies, and I just applied for it. I literally wrote my cover letter and redid my resume very, very quickly and applied for. I wanted to be the first person to reply to the email, and within the hour I replied. And this was the week of my final presentation, my final magazine presentation. I did a phone interview on Monday. I did my magazine presentation on Wednesday. They asked me to come in for a follow-up interview, and they asked if I could come to New York. And I had luckily I have family in New York. I grew up there, and I did my final presentation on Wednesday. I packed my car on Thursday, and I drove to New York right before Hurricane Irene hit. And I said, I just want to get in the door, and it's really easy. I'm just going to look for Black people when I get there, and that was really my plan. And and that sounds ridiculous, but it really was. And I ended up getting the internship, and we're in the same office as AOL. AOL is just on the other side of the hallway, and a good friend of mine from undergrad actually was working on the AOL side, and we planned to go to lunch. And the day before we planned to go to lunch, I saw that Black Voices was hiring an associate editor, and we talked about it the next day. And she happened to know the managing editor. She introduced me to him, and it was kind of a snowball effect from there. He just asked me to send him my resume, and about a week or two later, I had the job. So, yeah.
We are joined by Jennifer Tanaka. Thank you, Jennifer. Welcome.
Hi. Sorry I'm late.
Who's the deputy editor at Chicago Magazine. Jennifer, I asked two questions. One, what's your job now? Explain what you do now, and this is a relatively new job for you. And two, what was your first job out of Medill, and how did you get it?
My job now is I'm the deputy editor at Chicago Magazine, which is third on the masthead. And it came about earlier this year. We got a new editor. Her name is Beth Fenner. She's from Mahoney Magazine, where I believe she was the ME, one of the AMEs. And I had been working for about 10 years as a senior editor. At city magazines, I just think there's like the editor and then this gaggle of senior editors. And so I was one of the gaggle. And she decided that she wanted to create a team of managers, basically. So I would say that my role is really managing editor right now. Cassie Walker is the executive editor, and she's also a Medill grad, but a graduate school Medill grad. And she is working on features, and I'm doing managing, and I'm also looking at the website. So that's how we split it up.
What was your first job out of Medill?
I worked as an editorial assistant at Newsweek Japan, which was Newsweek's Japanese language edition, back when Newsweek was on Madison Avenue. That was a long time ago. And I actually got the job straight out of Medill through a graduate named Valerie Birch Abrams, who was the editor. And she posted it here, and I applied, and I just moved. That was it. No big story.
Tell us, and anyone can take this, what do you know now that you wish you knew when you were coming out of school? I mean, what would you have wanted to know? Is there anything you were sort of particularly naive about? Is there anything anyone could have told you that might have, though you all landed on your feet pretty quickly and easily. But yeah, was there anything you Any advice you wish you had? Go ahead.
I'll go ahead. I guess one thing that I wish I had known. I mean, I always knew that Medill was great. Like, I knew that the name Medill, as soon as you said that name, people were going to be impressed. But I have to be honest, I was like, Medill's not really going to do that much for me. You know, I was like, there's no way that I really could say Medill and people will be like, really? You know, I was like, oh, I'm going to say that, and people were like, okay, you got a degree in journalism. But I wish that I had known how prepared I really, really was to kind of go into the real world and knock the ball out of the park. I think it's very easy to feel very overwhelmed and feel like you don't know what you're doing and feel like you're really young and like you can't take it, like real world journalism is way over your head. It's not. Medill is a very realistic environment. They foster a very realistic environment here, and you'll be surprised how much more stressed out you are here than you will be at your job. Seriously. And not to say that I don't get stressed out, because unfortunately I really do, but I can handle it, and I know I can handle it because I was at Medill. And I think that's one thing. Although I was extremely confident with both my Medill degrees, I was a little afraid that I wasn't going to be able to handle it because you're a student for so long and you think I don't have that real world experience, but you do. You absolutely do, and you can do it. I think for me, because I was going to web and not magazine specifically, I was very scared and I thought that I wasn't going to be able to do it. But you are beyond qualified, and that's one thing I really wish I knew.
Anyone else? Anyone else want to take? John?
I guess one thing that is that just realizing to what extent the HR process in lots of magazines is a complete formality. I wouldn't say that it's like a total black hole or dead end, because some of our other panelists here have gotten jobs through that route, obviously. But I don't know, just if I would have known that, like, not that I was lucky and didn't have to pepper a bunch of applications into HR people, but just like the extent to which editors, when they're looking to hire other editors, just like, and maybe I'm speaking from limited experience, but just like HR is just like they're not a tool that is used. So, like, I mean, I think that's a valuable thing to know.
How helpful was the Medill network to you as you were looking?
Very, very helpful. I mean that's how, like, I guess my sort of how I got my first job story was sort of twofold. I mean, that I worked at doing that fact checking for like 7 or 8 months, but prior to that, the spring break, my senior year, I looked up a bunch of people working at magazines I was interested in. They were in the New York. I knew I wanted to move to New York, and I looked up in the New York Alumni Club, I guess it was, and just emailed them and said I'm going to be here this week. I was also going to look for a house, so that turned out well. But yeah, and everyone I contacted was like, yeah, come on by. Like, talked with each one of them for like 15, 20 minutes, and then ended up Popular Science. A contact there basically sort of paved the way for me to get this first web editorial job there. So yeah, it was like the complete opposite.
Suzy. Go right ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that the Medill network was like irreplaceable for me in my job search. I did the same thing that John did. I reached out to a bunch of magazine editors of magazines I was interested in and met with them over a week in New York. And I think the best piece of advice someone ever gave me was network, number one, and follow up with your contacts. Like, I was always scared to like reach up to someone I'd met over coffee for 15 minutes or just met at a networking event, be like, oh, we only talked for a while. Like, what am I going to email them now about? What am I going to send them an email about? And the worst they can do is just not respond. And if they do respond, you're like keeping that contact. And like John said, a lot of editors, the HR process is a formality. People hire their friends. People ask their friends who they know who's looking for a job. So if you're looking for a job, like, tell the editors you met that you're looking for a job, or your feelers, because they might have an editor friend that's asking them for hire. I know when I was hiring freelancers, I went through all editor contacts through Medill. They're like, do you know anyone who's freelancing? Do you know anyone who wants to write about this? And then a fun story is Dan was actually the first Medill contact I ever met when I was interviewing for an internship out of college, I think, undergrad, before I came to Medill. But I was thinking about coming to Medill. He was Medill, and he kind of talked me into coming and going to Medill. And I think we've just been emailing back and forth for the past, 6 years. He's never gotten me a job, but this is the first... This is the first time I've seen him since I think we spoke in like 2007. But I never had a reason to email him. I never really had a reason to reach out, but I always did because I knew he was a nice guy. He was helpful, and he reached out. So just put an alert in your calendar and follow up with people from the Medill Network because people are really happy to help, and they'll remember that they know someone is looking for a job. So
another good way to follow up with people is to pitch them stories. Like the editor that I met with at Popular Science did the sort of how-to section and had a little box, like just a tiny little thing that like a tip of the month, and I just pitched him one of those and ended up filling a box he needed to fill that month. So it's a good way to keep in touch.
Jennifer, you guys recently had an opening for an EA, and I heard that you got 600 resumes.
Is that the new number?
Yes, that is the new number.
Wow. I will say that HR was not a formality in this case.
Yeah.
They did a pretty good job of like vetting DNQs. Do you know what that is? Do not qualify. And so that was basically the first cut of like does not meet minimum requirements as stated in the job description, which was really helpful when you get 600 resumes. But it was really interesting watching them all. I will say, like, do a good job on your resume.
Yeah, I was going to say, what advice do you give? How do you make your resume stand out?
Just through this process, I would say, like get a graphic designer friend to help you because it really helps if it's organized well and isn't just like an RTF file. Take your cover letter seriously and don't say that you're really tall or, stuff like that. Not that it's a bad thing, but it's like sometimes quirk seems like it's going to be a good move, and then it comes across as like not relevant, I would say. But I would say that in journalism you can be interpretive with your resume. Like the ones that I've liked the most are ones that really pull out of the sort of list of institutions, skills that you have, stories you've worked on, things that are specific, because you should remember that you're talking to an editor. If they understand the work, and so you can be kind of inside baseball on your resume, I would say.
Dan?
Yeah.
I'm only 6'2". So, one other thing I think that's nice too is that with new media, so many people out there are embracing it, and if the ones that are scared of it want to love it, and so, for example, like we had our last intern, and she didn't have that many clips, and they were okay, but she had a blog, and she was basically blogging about the TV shows she loved, and it was the strength of her blog that I took a look at it, and I just said, I really think this person could fit in here because we have, for example, this thing called Pop Watch on our website where people can kind of write love letters or essays or hate mail or whatever they want, but it's really very writer. It's all tone and attitude, and she had it. And I just felt like if she had a chance, but she wasn't going to make it on her clips, and we took a chance on her, and it worked out great, and she just got a full-time job. And so it's like that type of thing, whereas if you, again, this is obviously very entertainment specific, but like if you had a really funny like Tumblr or something like that like we would be talking about it. People would be passing it around saying, this person gets it, gets the spirit of the magazine, gets the tone. If you had a web series or something like that where you just did it with your friends, something like that can absolutely, get attention. So yes, it's important to have good clips, obviously, but there are other ways to get attention, and people will notice it, I think.
I totally agree. We just finished interviewing for some interns, and we had some people that were incredibly qualified but didn't have much of a digital presence. And I think what I will say is really understand where the marketplace is right now. As magazine students, it's very easy to kind of only want to do print and to only want to write long feature stories and, 2,000-word articles, and you have to understand where the marketplace is right now and be very realistic about what's happening in journalism right now. Start a Tumblr page, start a blog, be active on Twitter. These were things that we really looked for because it's such a huge part of what we do every single day. Just having that comfort level on the internet will get you so far because you have no idea how much that really helps in an office setting, whether it's print. I personally think whether it's print or web, having that digital comfort will take you so far. We had so many qualified candidates that just did not have that digital presence, and we had to kind of move on to the next candidate because we weren't comfortable taking that chance with someone that we felt couldn't really take us there, and be innovative, and don't be afraid to be innovative, because people are really looking for that. Newsrooms get boring, and sometimes you get jaded and you forget to have new ideas. And so it's always really nice to have somebody who can think outside of the box and really bring some great ideas to the table.
Felicia and Jeff, why shouldn't we be afraid of B2B? And what do you say about careers there?
Yeah, I would say one of my biggest pieces of recommendation is if you really want a magazine job to kind of broaden your horizons about what the magazines are that are out there. I probably, like many of you, I grew up, wanting to be a Esquire writer or whatever. And I kind of realized when I wanted to move to Washington, D.C., I can't, write for Esquire while I'm there. And I've had a really fun, interesting, diverse career in B2B, trade magazine, and association magazines, and there are a ton of them out there. I mean, if you look at this sheet between me and Felicia, things like Professional Builder, and I've been on Building Products and Eco Home and Architect, and I worked for a magazine called Units about the apartment industry. Like, there are magazines that you would never know existed, and there are some, and it's really fun. You still get to write about amazing people, interesting stories, and you still get to travel all over the country and attend cool trade shows or visit cool new buildings that are out there. I've really enjoyed my career in trade journalism, and it's given me an opportunity to be a magazine writer and a magazine editor.
Felicia?
Yeah. I mean, everything that he said is very true. And I also wasn't going out after, like, the trade industry, but there are so many opportunities. And if you've got the basic skills, you're going to get to do everything that you might get to do more, actually, than you would get to do at a general market publication. I think just so often you think about either magazine jobs or newspaper jobs as, working these crazy hours and, just not having a regular schedule. I mean, working for a trade publication is about as close as you can get to a 9-to-5 job. It's not necessarily 9 to 5, but you've got your weekends free for the most part. You're not working holidays. But you're really getting to, if you love writing, if you love reporting, if you're curious and you love finding out about a particular subject, trade publications are a great area. It's kind of ironic that we're both kind of have a background in trade publications in the construction industry, and that's an industry that hasn't done that great in the last few years. But still, we've really learned a lot, and I know I've learned a lot, and I'm sure that he has too. And I just think you don't want to overlook those opportunities. It's a really great opportunity.
I think what's daunting to people is the idea of learning those industries. It feels as though, oh my God, I don't know anything about the building industry. Why would I do that? I mean, how do you overcome those fears?
I did have that fear when I got my first job. And you just do your homework. I mean, you just, go back and you read issues. You talk to the other editors that are there. Even as you're doing interviews, you're asking questions. And I wasn't afraid to say, I'm kind of new to this industry. Give me some insight. What should I know? Give me some good foundation. So, you're all Medill students. You're a quick study. So I wouldn't let that intimidate you.
Jeff, you said you're just learning architecture.
Right, and of course I knew nothing about home building coming out of journalism school, nor did they expect me to necessarily. So that's one thing to remember, is that they'll give you an opportunity to learn a little bit on the job, especially for you guys that are just coming out of school. But also remember that we're journalists and we're trained to pull out the story in whatever we're covering. And so, I mean, remember that for yourself, but remember that also in interviews or whatever. For architecture, for example, it's really easy for me to cover or pull out the interesting, I'm a great business reporter about the business of architecture, or I'm a great technology reporter about the technology of architecture. I may not have taken enough architecture history classes at Northwestern, but pulling out the stories and telling the profiles and things like that, I mean, we know how to do that, and make sure you let them know that you know how to tell those stories.
5 of the 7 of you are master's degree holders. Without I'm not trying to evangelize for the master's degree program, but was that, what made you just make that decision, and was that worth it?
The thing that really attracted me to the master's degree program, and I think is the thing that got me to my current job and to my current position and what I do, is the magazine publishing project. As part of that, that's why I wanted to go to Medill. That's why I wanted to be in the master's program. And I will say that the experience that I had in the master's program in the magazine publishing project was irreplaceable. Like, I worked with Bonnier on Science Illustrated, and Mike Haney, who I think now is at Mag Plus. Yep. But so we worked directly with Bonnier. We got to work as, we're quote unquote like consultants to rebranding their magazine. We got hands-on experience with people who were working in the magazine world. I kept those contacts. I actually ended up getting a job that I didn't take through those contacts at Parenting, which is also part of Bonnier. Still email them, still keep in touch. And then just in terms of the project that we developed, I think it's really what got me to so quickly to my current position at my job, is when we got under new ownership at Backstage, and the new owners wanted to go through a redesign and rebrand the publication and develop a new voice. I was just an assistant editor on the website. I wasn't doing anything. And I went up to the new owners who didn't have a lot of media experience, and I basically presented our PowerPoint from the grad program. And I was like, this is what I developed. This is the PowerPoint. This is our strategies. This is how I worked as a consultant for this other publishing company. And they were really impressed. They were like, wow, this is real world work that you did in grad school, and this is really applicable to exactly what we're trying to do with the publication. And as a result, they promoted me to the senior level editorial to help kind of run that and basically do what I did in grad school at the publication in the real world. And it's not any different than what you did in grad school. You're still doing the same thing. You're putting real results in action in the real world, and it's really exciting. And so I just can't say enough how much that experience just was amazing and really just invaluable in my career.
Yeah, I felt like I needed a little bit more real-world experience. It gave me some time to do a couple more internships. I did the global program, was able to do some really cool reporting in London. And it just gave me an opportunity to kind of develop my voice, develop my experience a little bit. So how it played out once I got into the job market was based solely on just having my master's and having done those kind of extra internships and doing the magazine publishing project. I was able to be an associate editor instead of an assistant editor, which also came with like a 10 or 20% higher salary. So, I mean, I don't know how much it takes to pay back a year of grad school, but you know, with a 20% higher salary, it goes back, comes back a little bit faster. I have heard, so I asked some people in my office about this subject, what they thought of people with master's degrees, and one of them told me a story. I don't know if it's apocryphal or not, but a major magazine in DC now that actually wouldn't consider people with graduate degrees because they think they'd be too expensive. Whether that would really happen in a recession still, maybe not, but that's just that's also a perception that's out there, I guess.
Dan.
Well, it's funny you say that about salary, but it was actually when I got out there, and by the way, the grad program is very valuable, and we're going to talk about that in a sec. But I do want to say that I thought it was interesting. I had the opposite experience of you, which is that they said, all right, Mr. Fancy Pants master's degree, like, don't think that matters out here. Like, people were kind of threatened a little bit by it, which I found, like, strange. It's like, don't you want us to know things? Like, but the program was so valuable, and I wouldn't have gotten my job if it wasn't for the magazine program, you know. And people like Charles and stuff are like fans of yours. Like, they're rooting for you. They're trying to help you get jobs. And through these connections, that's how I wound up at the Time Inc. Internship I mentioned downtown at People. And I took a quarter off while I was, you know, in grad school and did that too. So in addition to the magazine program being great and completely immersing you, as you guys know, it resulted in real-world connections that internship led to the next internship. And what I loved about the magazine program also was it was just being around nerds like all the time. Like, all we did was just talk magazines. It was like, in undergrad, I felt like, you know, everyone was kind of all over the map. But like in the magazine project, we were all together and we were just living it and breathing it. And it was we would have set up like a Facebook fan page at the time, if there was Facebook then. But like it was just one of those things where talking about it all the time and trying to emulate different writers, people like saying, okay, here are the 3 magazines I would love to work at. Okay, here's where I don't want to work. Here's what I would do. It was just those conversations. Like I remember those too. So it was just being around like-minded people that like really like. It was the undergrad education here was great, but I really look at that 5th year as being like the galvanizing important year.
Felicia and Jennifer, you guys did not specialize in magazine necessarily. Felicia, you were interactive. Jennifer, were you magazine as an undergrad?
There was no magazine.
There was no magazine. That's right. You were back in the days with me when the dark ages when magazine was sneered at almost in Medill. What was the segue like into magazines? Did that help, hurt? I mean, what did you feel sort of picking it up?
Because as everybody was talking, I kind of realized that I was one of the few people that hadn't gone through the magazine program. What's interesting is when I started off at Black Voices, there was actually a magazine component, a Black Voices magazine that was targeted to historically black colleges and universities. So whatever I didn't know, I began to learn as I was part of Black Voices, and then my next position was with Read Business Information and their publications. So, I mean, there may be some things, some intricacies that I didn't know, but I don't feel like there was a big knowledge gap, things that I wasn't able to pick up. I mean, it's just like, working in a trade, for a trade publication and having to get a specialized type of knowledge. You can learn on the job. You just kind of, pick up what you need to do, and you've got the basic writing and editing skills. So, yeah, I don't think it was a problem.
Yeah, I would agree that it was on-the-job training. And for me, it was probably lucky that I started at Newsweek, which is really a hybrid of a newspaper and a magazine. And as I stayed there, it became more magazine-y, And then I went to Chicago Magazine, which is completely different. Yeah. I would say there's a huge difference between weeklies and monthlies. And that was an education, too. So,
One last question, then we're going to open it up for the audience to chime in. Those of you who launched yourselves in the New York magazine world, Suzy, John, sort of Jennifer to a certain extent, who just sort of did it, Danielle, you too. How scary is that? Sort of going out there, I mean, you hit graduation, there's still no job, you're not quite sure, oh my God, what am I going to do? I mean, how do you steel yourself to do that? What is that like? What would you say to these folks? June is coming, their parents are on their backs, why don't you have a job yet? What do you say to them? How do you do that? How do you get the nerve to sort of go out there and with, again, approaching graduation, no job, what are you going to do?
It's absolutely terrifying. I will not lie. No, it's
That's not what you're supposed to say.
I know. I shouldn't. I will not lie to you people. It's very scary. But you just do it. And I think as an undergraduate, I think you, especially as a female, you have this dream that you're going to go and you're going to live in New York and your life is going to be great. You're going to be an editor. You're going to go to
Carrie
parties.
Bradshaw.
You're going to be Carrie Bradshaw and wear Manolos. No, you're not. And when and then you get to your senior year and you're like, oh, there are no jobs, and how am I going to make any money? And I need to get an internship, and it's probably unpaid, and I'm going to be living in a basement, and it's very scary. But you hone in on what you really want to do, and you chase it. I think for myself, I really knew what I wanted to do, and I was lucky and blessed to have family in New York and not have to, hop from couch to couch and like pay rent. Which is tough. I have a lot of friends who have done it, and it's very hard. But I think what I found with all of my friends from grad school who picked up and moved to New York and did the whole nine, it's worked out for them because we all weren't afraid to take chances. Don't be afraid of internships. I know you feel like you need to get a job. I know you feel like you need to be making money, but don't be afraid of internships because they open so many doors for you. And get in there, get your foot in the door. That was really my thing, was that I realized that I might not land exactly where I wanted to land, but I wanted to get my foot in the door, and I wanted to meet people. I wanted to be engaged with people. You'll be surprised at how much interns are valued in certain publications. You'll be surprised at what a huge and integral part of the team you end up becoming, and what doors that opens for you. So don't be afraid. Don't think that it has to be that dream job. Don't think that has to be the first step. If you do, if you're going into New York, you got to dive in head first. It's a tough city, but you just have to. It's kind of like a Nike attitude. You just got to do it, and you just go, and you'll be surprised. You kind of you ride off on a wave, and before you know it, you're somewhere. It's surreal, and you realize that you're the place that you always wanted to be, and you don't know how you got there, but you got there, and you kind of just have to dive in head first and ride the wave. But be ambitious and don't be afraid. Don't second guess yourself. Go with your gut. Meet people, speak to people, ask people questions. People will really respect that about you. And I know New York is a tough city, but I'm always surprised when I see someone like ask me another question or come to me or send me another email. I'm like, wow, you've got guts, and I respect that because it's scary. It's hard to do. So if you're gonna do it, and no holds bar. Just kind of go and give it all you got.
John, Dan, anyone? Suzy?
I was probably going to say the exact same thing. So just do it.
Yeah, I mean, I got super lucky. I mean, I had something lined up a couple months before graduation, so it was like, I don't know. I mean, I was blessed in that respect. But it's, I think you should want to live in that city no matter what you do. I think that would be important. Like I really wanted to. I loved New York. And had a bunch of friends who lived there and moved with my roommate and several friends. So, it was more about like, I was going to move there no matter what, basically, because I just wanted to live there. And I think that's important.
Jennifer. Oh, Felicia. Oh. No, we're taping. I think we're taping.
What Danielle said about taking an internship, because to me, just on the inside of magazine, the trust is the biggest issue. Right, whether you're hiring a freelancer or a new person, you're like, not only can the person do the job and are they qualified on paper, but like, do they jibe with us? Do they get it? Right, and the best way to introduce yourself to editors is to actually work with them on stuff. Right, that's the key. And as an intern, I mean, you have so much latitude. Right, you can like walk everywhere and look at everything and sit in on the meetings. And the ones who have been very enterprising and, confident are the ones that we notice. The ones that, like, never raise their hand, we don't notice. So, the intern, you actually, I think, have to, like, really prepare yourself to do a good job in an internship. You have to show that you're reading the magazine. You have to read the newspaper. And so when you pipe up at a meeting, like, don't say a dumb thing, I don't know. But and I will say that if you're going to live in New York, you should do it in your 20s when you can afford to be poor.
Let's open the floor for questions. Let's hear what. Wow. Let's hear what you got. Your hand shot up. What do you guys have to say? I can probably be loud enough. No, we're taping. We want to make sure that everyone's heard.
I think 6 out of 7 of you wrangle freelancers. So that's what, 83%. What are you looking for in freelancers, and what do we need to show you to be good freelancers?
First of all, that you can meet deadlines, that you have good writing skills, that you're responsible, you're a nice, personable person, because you'll have to be dealing with press reps.
But how do we show all that in a query letter? I mean, how do we get you to make the assignment to us?
Get to make the assignment. That you show that you're familiar with what topics you would be covering. So that's important.
How? Be specific. What do you want to see? Write that query letter for me. What
do I want to see? I want to see your qualifications. That you went to Medill is huge. That you have a degree. Usually when a freelancer responds, they send a clip or two, which is the style of writing that they would be doing. If we're looking for news on the website, it would be a news clip. If we're looking for someone to write feature profiles, they would send a feature clip. Only one. Don't send more than one, because if you get a lot, you don't have time to read all of them. Make your query letter short and to the point. Say, I've written about this before. I have these contacts. I have this qualifications. And just, and if it catches my eye and it looks great, I'll usually work with a freelancer on a first assignment, and then it's kind of on an assignment basis until the relationship is developed. If they totally screw up the first assignment, I'm not going to call them back. I had a freelancer who didn't even go to an event she was assigned to cover, so she's not going to be freelancing for me anymore. But just be short, specific, state your qualifications, state your expertise, and give an example of your writing.
I mean, I think you have to definitely be as specific as possible and know the magazine or website or whatever you're pitching to. Like, if the story is something that has showed up in other magazines over the last 6 months or something, like, pitches are very often like, no, that's an old story. Like, I mean, it has to be specific. It has to be like on target to that magazine as far as what they cover and what they've covered in the past. And yeah, I mean, and you also just have to like kind of write the story. You have to sort of. Because editors, a good story makes an editor's job easier, because that's one thing they don't have to, assign and come up with themselves. So, like, you have to prove that this is a great story, this is a unique story, it's news, if it's a news story, which, everything has sort of some element of news to it. And, and just be as specific and detailed as possible, I would say.
Felicia, are all your freelancers in the industry? Do you hire outside freelancers?
We have a couple of freelancers that we work with on a regular basis that are not in the building codes industry. And it is kind of challenging for our freelancers because our publication isn't open to the public. It's a members-only publication, so you can't just go online and say, oh, well, what did they write about last month and get a feel for it. So I think freelancers who are dependable, and that's why we use the ones that we use. They've been very dependable in meeting deadlines and, being able to talk to them quickly on the phone or shoot them a quick email, and it's like, I got it. And then they prove it by what they turn in. It's not like I have to go and rewrite it and re-edit it. So we don't use a whole lot of freelancers, but when we find good ones, I just go to them on a regular basis for almost every issue for what we write. So, but yeah, I mean, if you're a good writer and if you have a good grasp of technical writing, that's a good start. So yeah, if you sent me something that gave me evidence of that, then I'd be willing to at least try out.
Jennifer, how do you get to Chicago? Felicia, would you pass that mic?
Like Felicia, I just use the same people over and over because it's easier. But I would say that what's helpful in a pitch letter is if you can demonstrate that you've surveyed the news market in the same way that I would, right? So if I'm looking at an idea, I'm going to do a nexus search. I'm going to see what the national coverage is versus the local coverage. If it's been done, you got to show me that it's been done and that you're pitching me a new angle. You show me that legwork in the pitch. And I think that'll get you at least a little bit farther down the road. Sometimes what I've said to Medill classes is that it might be helpful to demonstrate in your pitch that you are willing to change your idea, right? That you have a pitch for a story, but that you say, it could be a one-page profile. It could be a chart. It could be an infographic on your website, whatever. Just that you're willing to take your idea and have it be edited and changed, or you can see many angles on it. That I find helpful.
Other questions? Yes.
I have a question about the importance of mentors. I know that Medill, they're very into sort of fostering the idea of having a mentor or finding a mentor, and I was wondering if any of you had that sort of relationship, and if so, how you find one and how you kind of foster that relationship.
Finding mentors. Who were your mentors? None of you have mentors?
Well, I guess how do you define mentor beyond like someone who's just in like your sort of Medill network that you've, like Charles to me, or
Well, I know that. Sorry, I know someone said that they were lucky they had someone take them under their wing, that sort of thing. Someone to kind of show you the ropes and maybe, I don't know, sort of help you through, like if you have questions and that sort of thing. I know that. Do you just kind of reach out to somebody that you admire, or is it someone that you're introduced to, or I just, if if none of you have really had that kind of relationship, I mean, don't, but.
No, go ahead.
Not to, at Charles. Yeah, I mean, Charles says jump, I say how high. I mean, really.
I don't think so.
No, I mean, if you ever did, you don't. You never do. But if you did, I just felt very close to Charles. I would see him in the hallway and be like, "Can we talk? Can you have 5 minutes?" And we would just chat, and I would say, "I'm nervous about this. I'm wondering, how does this work?" I just would ask him questions. I would pick his brain, kind of. And I think Medill professors, for me it was Charles, but Medill professors in general are amazing and have such a great network, and I can't remember who it was that said that, but really are your biggest fans and really want you to succeed. And I think you should really take advantage of that relationship. Medill grads in general, I think, and I can't speak for everyone, but I think that Medill grads in general are really interested in reaching out and helping kind of this Medill network that we have. I alluded to the list of Medill listserv earlier. If you're not on it, get on it. It's a little crazy sometimes, but it's a great resource because what I would do was I would read people's signatures. And if there was a publication I was interested in, or if I saw a job come up, I would comb back through my email and send them an email and say, hey, I noticed that you sent out an email before. I'm applying to a job at your publication. Is there anything that you can tell me? Is there any way that you can get my resume into somebody's hands? Or just, just asking questions, even if there's not a job there, start to kind of foster a relationship with them. You'll be kind of surprised at how willingly people will help you. But definitely professors are a great resource. Alumni are a great resource. I became really close with, when I was a freshman, I became very close with people who were in the senior class, who I'm still close with to this day. So yeah, really understand your social network that you have around you. And the fact that the people who you're in class with might end up working at a publication that you're interested in, or might be your next employer. So understand that the people you're sitting next to, the people that you're working with on a day-to-day basis are people that you might call on later in life. They might know someone at a publication that you want to connect with. They might put you in touch with someone. So just understand the social capital that you have around you, because it's huge.
Take advantage of being a student. I think I underestimated how willing people are to go get coffee with you if you're a student. I mean, that's an opportunity you're not going to have very many times in your life. So that goes for if you're looking for a mentor. I mean, I was kind of the one who said, one of the people that I went out for coffee with, she was the one who kind of showed me around her office just because I asked to see her office. But I mean, and it goes for like freelance work as well. I mean, networking isn't just for full-time jobs. If you see a publication that you want to freelance for, ask to go out to coffee and, just ask them if they think your ideas are good or something like that. I mean, you don't want to totally bother them just by asking, completely like a fishing expedition or something. But I mean, they're really willing to help out students, and so take advantage of that.
Other questions? Will? Oh.
And then the gentleman in the pink.
Sometimes at a magazine, a new editor-in-chief comes on board, has a different way of doing things, maybe wants to take the magazine down a little bit of a different path, and you're there feeling the ground kind of shifting under your feet, maybe hearing that a few of your colleagues got laid off or fired. Have any of you had that situation, and if so, how did you handle it?
Jennifer? It sounds like your life story.
Well, you just hang in there, basically. Having a new editor-in-chief is a huge change because, Beth, for example, comes from Money, where I take it they're very organized, and she has completely changed our process from everything she touches is different. And so how do you handle it? You just smile and you do it, and I will say that there have been many stories sort of get lost in translation right? The relationship you have with your editor is kind of an intimate one. You understand when you say something, like they understand what you understand, and you produce the thing that they wanted, and that sometimes doesn't happen, the first time out. And there have been cover packages that I've worked on that Beth's like, oh, this is completely not at all what I wanted. And I'm like, oh, whoops, So it's really hard. I've found it tough, but invigorating.
Dan, you've worked for several editors at EW.
Yeah, the key is to have the new guy actually having worked at EW like 10 years before, so everyone remembers everyone. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's just something where I guess I would just try to keep in mind the fact that this person is new as well, so you just kind of look at it just like that you're scared and like, what does this mean for my job? But they're excited to be there, and they want you to, obviously kind of get with the new program. And so I would say it's probably pretty good advice, and you might find that I'm like when it happened to us a few times, I remember thinking but I like the way we do things, and then it's like, you know what though, there's actually new tricks to be learned, and I think each time the magazine has grown, to be honest with you. So I was a little skeptical at first, and arms folded, in people's offices. You say, what does this mean for you? But it actually can be good. So there's really only one way, and it's cooperation.
This actually just happened 2 months ago, and our new managing editor is the managing editor of 3 other sections. So we were very adverse to it because our managing editor was very overwhelmed, and he decided to become our politics editor because that's what he was more passionate about. And all of us were kind of like, what are you doing? What do you mean? You're abandoning us. And we're a very small team, and we're very close-knit, and so we didn't really understand, and we kind of felt like this new person was an outsider, and he completely revamped things in our day-to-day. And like you said, we kind of were like, we like what we're doing, and we don't want to do all this. But it was really helpful, and our lives are 10 times better, actually. And yeah, I think you just kind of you kind of just go with the flow, and you go with the program, and you smile, and you just continue to get along with people, and you realize that it eventually becomes normal. And yes, you had a normal prior to that, but the newness of it eventually becomes regular, and it will be the regular that you're adverse to changing eventually. And you never thought that you would get used to that, but you do, and it actually becomes you get used to it.
Suzy?
And this sort of just happened. We didn't really get a new editor coming, but someone got promoted to be the new editor. So I guess it is the new editor-in-chief, but someone who's familiar with the older team. But it's also a really great opportunity for your ideas to get heard, I found. The new editor comes in. Obviously, they have new ideas and a new way of running things, and it totally changes what you're doing day-to-day and everything everyone else said. Cooperate, smile, do what you're asked. But it's also a good opportunity to hey, I've had this idea to change this, and people, new people want people who are eager and excited to help, so it's a great idea to, get yourself heard and get your ideas put into action.
Yes.
One thing that I found really interesting is that you after you've worked for a certain editor for a long time, you absorb their way of doing things. And the one thing that Beth keeps saying is we don't have to do it that way anymore. You can completely change things, and so it is. You can look on that bright side and say oh, I once had this idea to do it differently, and maybe it would work,
Working for a company who focuses on the construction industry and especially single-family housing, we've experienced a lot of upheaval in the last 6 years. And I said that being a student is a unique opportunity to kind of reach out to people who will help you. But the other time that happens is during layoffs. I mean, that's the other time people will go out of their way to find you contacts, meet with you, talk with you about ideas, offer you freelance work, assuming, that you were a good employee and made friends and, did a good job while you were there. But, that's a good time to call in your friends, and a good reason to make friends with the people that you work with at your job.
Okay, so I guess if our ultimate goal is, to become an editorial assistant at one of the magazines within the 3,
Your ultimate goal?
not upon graduation, yeah, if you graduate, okay, I want to be an EA, and you haven't ever interned at, and you want to be at either Time Inc. or Hearst or Condé, but you have an intern there, is your best bet to probably apply for an internship, even if you are a master's student? Like, will they think that's weird if you're, applying for? I know timing has a lot, like InStyle and People and EW. They all have these really structured internships, which are great. Are they going to look at us and say, well, why are you applying? You're a master's student.
Absolutely not. No, I mean, in fact, I would say, in the New York office too, we have a lot of Northwestern people. I mean, people make jokes about it actually who didn't go there. Say, seriously, why do you guys, have a monopoly on this? But there are, I mean, I look at it like I told you, I did that, and I'm glad I did. I think so many people have come through with masters. People are, it's a completely different ball game like that. And I just think you just want to, like kind of what I was saying before, I just think you want to pick a place that you think you would do a great job at, and it's a perfect fit for you, and that show that you are hungry and you'd be, willing to do anything from party coverage to, blogging to whatever. That's not even, it's just funny you say that, because I would say so many of I'm just thinking back right now, I can't think of anyone no one's ever made that comment, and I think it actually is great because I'm just trying to think. I mean, I think it's. I'm just trying to.
I would add that there's an intern that's too good at their job is not a problem. That is a great thing.
That's basically. I mean, you won't have that problem out there, honestly, and people will be very impressed right now. I mean, like when you supposedly got 600 applications for your thing. I mean, so they're just looking for qualified people who are hungry. And so the only downside I would say is if they were worried that you would have a perception that you might be, above it. But I don't really feel that way. I think just the fact that you'd be applying would show that you were hungry.
I would definitely say if you apply and you interview, get that point across. Make sure that people know, I don't think that I'm too good for this, and I'm really passionate about this. And the thing about, and like I said before, you don't understand how valuable you are to that publication or that section or what have you as an intern. The intern is saves my life sometimes, and you just have to kind of show that you're really ready to get through the door and do everything and then some. And like you said, an intern that's good at their job, that's like a saving grace. It's amazing. And just understand, yes, it's an internship, but it's going to be an extremely valuable experience and be extremely helpful for the people in that office. And it's really one of the greatest things you can ever do. Do not be afraid of an internship. I know they're unpaid. Some of them are unpaid. Some of them are paid. They are very structured, and every publication is different. But I think it's an invaluable experience because you really have to understand how much you're helping the people at that office and take that to the next level. And
the truth is right now there are so few job openings, as you guys know, that internships are it's a stealth way in. You know what I mean? It's the way in right now, and so that's how you get hired. It's just prove yourself. It's low commitment for the magazine. If it's okay, let's try this person out for 3 months, it's low commitment for you. And so, when there are no staff jobs, even when there's hiring freezes, there's always intern opportunities. And not to scare BSJ, but MSJ. When I see that someone has their master's or is finishing up, I'm like, oh, this is great. This person is really knows what they're doing. Not to say that I wouldn't say that same thing about people with bachelor's degrees if they came from Medill. But when I see someone who's a master's student or is finishing up their master's or has received their master's, I take a second look because I think that they'll know what they're doing. Those are the people who I trust more.
Other questions?
I was just wondering how many jobs did you guys actually apply for prior to landing your first job out of Medill, and when do you recommend we start the entire process prior to graduation?
Yeah, when do you start the process?
I think starting. I'll take the second question. You want to start as if somebody's looking to hire someone, they want. Almost with very rare exceptions, will want that person to start as soon as possible. So yeah, I think you should start when you're ready to immediately take a job, basically. Yeah.
I actually started 6 months before networking in the city where I wanted to move to, and that actually paid off. I managed to find one of those rare jobs where they were like, yeah, you can start in 3 months when you finish up with school. So earlier than 6 months before, though, I don't think there would have been any other than networking, any real help to applying for jobs then.
Yeah, you can start the networking immediately,
Yeah, definitely.
but as John said, if there's an opening, the way this business works, if there's an opening now. People don't hold. Jennifer has 600 people applying for her job. They're not going to hold it for you. You're not that special that they're going to hold it for you. When you get out 6 months from now, they are going to make that hire now. But you can start getting on their radar, so in case that person doesn't work out or some other person doesn't work out, you're there. So you can start the networking. But yeah, if there's an opening, there's an opening now.
In some cases, your company will take the hire away from you if you've proven you can live without it for a certain amount of time. So there's definitely like an impetus to hire immediately.
Trade media might be a little bit different just because, now that I think about it, I'm not the only one who we've kind of waited on to graduate from school for an entry-level job. So, I mean, especially if you're looking at trade media, don't be afraid to start
That's a good point.
applying to jobs that are available now, even if you're not graduating for another maybe 3 months. They'd be willing to wait, I mean, not a whole year, but they'll be willing to wait a little bit for a really qualified, great Medill student.
I would also say take the opportunity, if you apply, take the opportunity to get on their radar. Take the opportunity to really start a conversation, if possible, and at least put yourself out there and let them know that you exist. Even if you don't get the position per se, I mean, pitch a story idea. Try to become a freelancer, something to kind of get on their radar, and maybe it'll turn into something in the future.
I have a couple of questions, and I apologize in advance if you already addressed these because I came in a little bit late. But so I am an IMC graduate, and one of the, selling points of IMC is that it'll sort of elevate your career from a salary standpoint too. So if you could just talk about kind of salaries in general in your field. And then my second question is related to writing. Somebody asked a question about freelance writers. I'm also interested in sort of staff positions and then the ratio between the two at your publications.
Let's take the salary question first. You guys are a little, well, what's starting EA salary in New York these days? I probably know as well as you do, but let me hear what you guys have to say.
I think I got paid a little bit less than what the starting salary was when I got an EA, and my master's did not. Well, it got me the job. I don't think it helped me negotiate salary. I got paid $25,000 a year plus overtime.
But so one thing that's really important to know about EA jobs is that they are generally overtime positions. There's only one publication that I know of that does not pay overtime, and I think they should be sued, and I'm about to turn them in if they don't turn that policy around. I won't mention it right here. So 25 is the base. Mm-hmm. There's not an EA in New York who's only making 25.
No, you make a lot of overtime.
You make a lot because they work you like a slave.
Yeah.
So you're actually making considerably a fair amount more.
Yeah, you're probably making
fact,
like between 30 and 35 a year.
At Condé, even a little more.
Maybe,
at Condé, because again, they work them pretty hard.
I think at Condé you start at like 30, 32.
You start about 33, 34.
Yeah.
And again, you're probably making 10,000 over that in overtime. They have to be very careful at Condé when they move up to assistant editor that they actually don't bump, because now you're an exempt employee. You don't get overtime anymore. They have to be careful that they don't lose money when they move from EA to assistant editor. So keep that in mind as well. These are generally overtime jobs. The base is often very low, but you are generally making overtime. At most publications. Again, there's one that I know of, and I think there's one other that sort of doesn't pay overtime. But generally, you are making overtime.
Yeah. And then once you're in the door, basically, and you can't, like, for me, I could negotiate with a master's for starting, but then it becomes something that gives you leverage when you negotiate for future positions and for promotions. I think it definitely helps.
And typically the starting salaries in B2B are higher because you're generally not starting at an editorial assistant level, correct?
Yeah, more in the 35 to 40 range.
Yeah.
Can you speak to it from the business standpoint as well, since she is an IMC? Because you've been focusing the editorial, but what about on the business side? If someone wanted to go into a marketing function, a PR function, at say one of the big houses, do you have any?
I actually can't speak to that. Actually, I don't. No,
It's higher.
It is higher, but I cannot speak with any authority about
my
about
minimal
that
experience would be that it would be like for similar types of jobs, maybe like a content marketing job versus a senior editor job. I'd say it might be like 10% higher in the marketing type jobs. It is higher. They're right about that. Or you've heard right about that.
I think basically for editorial, it's you're driving a Camry, and on the business side, you're driving a Lexus. Yeah. That's what I've seen.
I would say like one addition to that, and I don't know if this is a universal experience, but like you do have some leverage for like negotiating salary. If you're late, if you're the one, like, don't be afraid to sort of, like, it's not like someone who's about to hire. Like, if you're late in the process, it's basically like seems like you're a finalist or candidate. Like, no one's gonna say I'm not hiring you because you just asked for like $5,000 more. At least I wouldn't. And but it's really scary to do that. And it was for me, but I would say that it's like.
But I always tell everyone, never. I mean, generally, you feel as though you're there begging, frothing at the mouth for a job, and they make an offer, and you feel as though you've got to say yes on the spot. And I tell everyone, never say yes. Give yourself tell everyone, I don't care how badly you want that job, that you want 24 hours, that you need 24 hours to think about it. Express your extreme gratitude. Oh my God, I'm so excited. I really do want this. Take 24 hours and then go call someone and ask them, what do I do with this offer? And have them talk you through the negotiation for the higher salary. Never take the job. Again, never just say, yes, I want. As John said, if you're the one, they are not going to rescind that offer now because you said you want 24 hours to think about it. But and actually, I'd like taking more than that. But at least ask for more time. I have far too many people call me after the fact and say, yes, they offered me a job, and they offered me $25,000, and I took it. And I'm like, why did you do that? Why would you?
Sometimes
take
they
that?
say no when you negotiate.
Exactly.
This is exactly why I was always calling him.
Anyway. Ratio of freelancers to staffers in your places, in your shops?
Our company is now trying to move towards as much freelance as possible. They're trying to kind of cut back on having in-house staff writers. That hasn't been the case, except on the group I now work on, the commercial design group and architect. They have almost always done mostly freelance. The rest of the company has been a good portion of staff writers, but they're, as kind of our editorial reinvention, we're moving to having the people in the office being kind of the subject matter experts and the aggregators and the editors, and having as much of the writing done out of house as possible.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. I mean, I have 5 editors, not counting myself, for 4 websites, and that's like all editorial positions. So we're like, I think it's pretty universal that staffs, like full-time staffs, are basically as small as they possibly can be. But then that may sort of paint a dire picture. But I would say that, like, I have 2 freelancers that have been with me for almost 3 years on popsci.com, and they have a pretty dependable monthly income. Like, I like to pay freelancers on sort of a monthly rate.
So not by story?
Yeah, if it makes sense to do so. I mean, you sort of work out what that entails, but I think it's good for the freelancer and for me to have sort of a dependable. And then if they do more on top of that, then they're obviously paid more. But like, yeah, I mean, I think that can be a really attractive sort of situation to find yourself in, and then you can also, get a couple of those gigs going, and it slowly becomes something dependable, I would say.
Dan, EW is mostly staff.
Yeah, especially in print, it's staff. But on the web, that's changed. So I'm seeing a lot of bylines, a lot of new bylines on the website. So as we were recapping a lot more shows, there's just so much. The volume of text that's going up every day is huge. So I think there's good opportunity there.
And Jennifer, what's the ratio of staff to freelance?
We have maybe 8 editors. No, 6. 5? It just keeps going down. So we're trying to use more freelancers, but it's actually hard to find ones that are really good and that you can count on, especially for features. That's tough. There's a lot of rewriting.
You guys used to have so Dick's policy, I don't know what Beth's policy, Dick used to say, at least he would come to our classes and say this, that, if you had the good idea, he would give you a shot. If the idea was good, even if you were relatively, I know that didn't happen that often, but he swore that, if you're good, he would give you a shot at a feature. Is that still
If
true?
you're a freelancer?
Yeah, as a freelancer.
Sure. I believe that he would do that. Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm. I don't know about Beth.
Okay. Yes.
Hi. How you doing? I had a quick question, kind of piggybacking off of the previous question about when a new editor comes in, but more from the standpoint of freelancers. I know a lot of times editors come in, they have their